Hello again, this is the first video I've done in quite a while now. It's been about 6 weeks I think since I did the last proper video really. Not entirely sure where all that time's gone, but it always seems to just vanish. 1 week of the time's gone on getting all of this that you can see here all set up, because a couple of weeks ago I went to the 10th swag event. It was the second time I've actually been to that, and I had to sort of get this all set up and working, which has been a complete nightmare, to the point where I actually almost didn't go. I was going to cancel my booking because I'd booked to take my own table and my own sort of bench to set all this up on, and I'd got a table organised. I had a bit of a problem there getting something I could use because I didn't have anything myself. I managed to borrow something off of someone and make some alterations with their permission to make the table at the right height. I managed to find let's just say a door off of a wardrobe that was good enough to make a top out of, and then a little stand on the top to go on the top, which would have covered all of this across the top here. And then there was also like an upright to support the action replay, which is kind of similar to the setup I used to have back in the day when I had my original Amiga 500 setup. I'd have this little sort of unit that sat over it and everything was underneath, and then on the top of that unit here would have been the monitor was a 1084S I think I had back then. I'm pretty sure it was one of those, which unfortunately I don't have anymore, as with a lot of the Amiga stuff that I don't have. But there are things that I did keep, of which some are lurking around here, and I'll get onto those in a minute. So as I was saying, it's the 10th swag event a couple of weeks ago. That's held in Chipping Sudbury. This time it was sponsored by Scott, who runs Retro Workbench. You probably have seen him on eBay selling cap replacement kits for various systems and various other parts. He also does a lot of repairs. But he actually sponsored this event this time, so it was obviously that helps pay for the cost of hiring the venue out and all the other things that I needed to be paid for. So that was really nice of him. He also did a raffle. First prize in the raffle was a recapped Amiga 1200, so that was a pretty nice raffle, that one. This is the second swag event that I've been to. The first one that I went to was back in May. That one was sponsored by Stephen Jones, who you may have heard of. He's the guy who created the CheckMate case for the Amiga. He sponsored that event. I went to that one, but I just went on my own. I didn't take any hardware or anything with me. I just went to see what everything was about and met quite a few people, and it was really nice because quite a few of the people that I spent a lot of time talking to, they came this time as well, and they also brought their hardware with them and their setup. So it was really nice to see them again and sort of feel like I've started to make some new friends and things. So that's obviously always a nice thing. And again, this time round, Neil of RetroManCave fame was there doing his usual rounds, taking videos of things. He actually wanted me to do a little video piece on this VBS video backup system that I've got set up. I didn't really feel comfortable going on the camera, but I did chat with him, so there'll probably be a piece in one of his videos about that, I think, maybe. If he does put any videos up on Swag, they're definitely going to be worth watching anyway, because there was so much else there, and I know he would have gone around and videoed it, so it'd be a good way to get an idea of what goes on in these events. I didn't really take any footage myself. I took a few odd photos that I might put on the screen. There was one when things were not really been going that long. I think it was still quite early morning then. You can just about see my setup on the far left. See the right hand corner of it. And there's a couple of other shots I took throughout the day, but I didn't really do much. I was too busy firstly trying to get all this set up, and secondly just enjoying it really, just going around chatting with people and seeing what everybody else was doing, because that's really what it's all about. I did take a photo of my own setup when I was at home, and I'll quickly shove that on the screen and just sort of go over what's on there. And this is the setup, but pretty much I had at Swag. And you'll see there's like a bench at the bottom with a keyboard and joysticks on, and then there's like a white stand. That's all what I made sort of the weekend before, and then the rest of the week, the free time I had after work, I was desperately trying to get everything that was failing working in time for the Saturday. Now on the right hand side, we've just got pretty bog standard A500 set up with a screen above it, a couple of speakers. They're old gateway speakers, they are, from a PC. And I just set that up so people could come along and sit down and play some games on. That's actually the Amiga that seemed to have memory issues when I was last working on it in a video. The memory issues kind of seemed to go away. I'm not entirely sure why, and it was sort of working enough to run, but it did unfortunately just completely stop working after about 4 or 5 hours in, so that now definitely needs a good looking at. And then to the left, most of what you'll see there I've already got set up here on my bench now at the moment. And we've got, again, another monitor, a little set of old Sound Blaster speakers, a tiny little screen which I was using as a composite monitor, and I'll explain more about that in a minute. And then underneath you can see again a couple of joysticks, the mouse, and pretty much all what I've got set up here was underneath that. The middle of this photo, there's the video recorder and this, I say, this little screen to the left, below the left hand monitor. That's to do with the video backup system I was running. And then on top of that I've just got a Windows laptop that I was using to help me with some file transfers and things, because there was a few things I was having issues with, and I needed a way to format SD cards and sort of make images of them as well for some of the things I was trying to do. So what I'm just going to do here is quickly run over some of the items that I've got set up here and what they are. And what we'll do is start over on this side here. This is actually an A500 hard drive expansion and RAM expansion. These were fairly common, I guess. They usually got a nice chunky boxed in case in, a very loud fan, and usually quite an obnoxious sounding hard drive as well, often the case. This one I've actually got a SCSI to SD adapter on it, as you can see there. That's what that red board is, and just a bit of an anti-static bag to try and reduce any chance of things shorting out. And that basically just uses a micro SD card to emulate a SCSI hard drive. Obviously it's a lot nicer because it's quiet and it generates a lot less heat. Obviously if you like the noises of the hard drive, then you might not like these, but it's just easier to work with. So I had a bit of trouble getting that up and running. I may do a video on that, I may not, I'm not sure yet. It was really more a case of not knowing what I was doing, because a lot of the Amiga hardware, I've just forgotten so much. I've forgotten how to set things up, I've forgotten what the software does, I've forgotten the limitations of the hardware. For example, what the biggest partition sizes are you can create on disks, what the biggest drives things will take, all that sort of information. You know, we're talking over 25 years ago here, sort of thing, so it's all easily forgotten. I had a bit of a headache trying to get one of these working. I've got two of these. I've got one that I bought untested. That one didn't even have any ROM chips in it, so there was no way that was going to boot. And I've got a nice, really good condition, fully boxed one with all the bits, but that one just wouldn't work at all. I tried the ROMs from that one on this one, it wouldn't boot, so I assume the ROMs are perhaps faulty. And luckily I've got some spare ROMs, or some new ROMs that I bought, that are updated versions, and you're supposed to be able to boot from SCSI CD drives with these and various things. So I tried them on this this one, which I think is the untested one, and that actually works, so it was a bit of luck there. And I've got one of these Daytel expansion port splitters here, as I was sort of mentioning earlier, having like a support on my stand here to hold this up, which is what I used to have. I think it was blue tack to my original one that I used to have in my old setup. And all that really does is just break this out into a straight through, like a pass-through connector, and then break out one sticking straight up. It's, I say, a bit precarious, but it works. It's an Action Replay Mark III, again, something I had back in the day. Didn't really do anything with this there. In fact, I actually took it out, disconnected it, because all these connectors really do need a good clean up, to be honest, and you sort of breathe on it and it starts to go a bit crazy. So I've got an external keyboard here. The keyboard for the A500 Plus does work, but I was short of a working keyboard on the other machine, so I nicked the keyboard off of this. And I've got a PC-80 keyboard here, which you see goes around to this little retrocable.com gadget, which converts the Amiga keyboard, which is connected down here, into a PS2 keyboard. And then I've just got a PS2 to AT adapter on the end of that, and that's sort of given me the ability to use this external keyboard. This was originally supposed to be for my 486 project that I've not started, but yeah, I might have to find another keyboard for that now. And also, whilst we're on the subject of the keyboard, you'll see here there's these two little sort of hook-on connectors. These are often used on chips when you're hooking mods in, or certain boards. I think some ROM switches have these on, and it's so you can connect to a pin on a chip or a leg without doing any soldering. So what I've done here is used a couple of these and a recycled power or reset switch from a keyboard, and I've done this because, as you'll see, I've just pressed that and that's now resetting. So if I press that again, it resets the Amiga. The reason for that is that with the keyboard adapter you don't get the reset signal going back to the keyboard, so that was a quick thrown together solution to that. It just shorts two of the pins. I looked that up on a forum about doing that, because I thought, well, I don't know how I'm going to reset it then. I didn't really want to keep turning the power on and off, because that can cause a whole load of problems in itself. On top of that, we've got here another little mod board. All this does is act as a switcher to switch DF0 and DF1, so your internal and your first external floppy drive, between, well, which one is bootable, which one becomes the first boot drive. So depending on what position the switch is in, the external can be either DF1 or DF0. The reason I've done that is because I've got one of these SD card based floppy drive emulators. This is an SDXC, I think it's called. I've had a lot of problems with this as well. I ended up sort of giving up on that in the end. And the problem is, normally if you've got, say, a game on a floppy, it might not allow you to boot it by putting it in DF1. So this then allows you to have this switch which you can toggle and set your external drive as DF0, and then you should be able to boot as normal, and then obviously that becomes DF1. This thing, I've been having problems updating the firmware and various issues, so that it was set up but I never made use of it, unfortunately. Just a bit of a bodged power cable there to power that from the internal floppy drive. A bit more PC power supply recycling going on there. Another issue I had when I first started to get all this together, ready to take and try things, I was having problems where the mouse and joystick ports just didn't seem to be working properly at all. The mouse just wasn't working, and I tried loading up a couple of games and I found that the characters in the games were just constantly moving one direction. It turned out that it was likely to be this chip down here. So I had to steal a chip off another Amiga board that I had and hope that I could get it off without damaging it, and hope that the one on the other board, which wasn't working, that the chip was working. Luckily, I think it's fixed it. Either the chip from the other board works, or the original chip has started working again since I desoldered it. I'm not really sure. I'm a bit suspicious that this is actually the original chip, it's just started working again. So I've got to do more testing there, but at the time, I know I was sort of, we were talking a day or two before I needed to be heading off to swag, so it worked, move on to the next problem. So that's sort of the stage it got to. We've got an Indivision, individual computers, Indivision ECS here, and that's to get the VGA output, which is how I'm getting the output to my monitor at the moment. And then on the back here I've got, you can see, like a mouse adapter, which is one of these little things. There's a consolewire.com on the back. I don't know if that's where I got it from or that was the seller. I picked these up off of eBay. I'd got some mice, but I've got to be honest, I really don't like ball mice anymore. They're just such a pain to use. So I've picked a couple of those up just for the time being. And then finally, as you can see here, we've got a video recorder, and we've got this little screen here which isn't on at the moment, and all of this is all hooked up with a load of big bunch of wires, and that's going to this little box here on the back. This is on the serial port, and then we've got the Amiga's mono composite out on the back. That's also connected to the video recorder. That's actually directly connected to the composite input, so the video recorder can record the mono composite output of the Amiga. The reason for that is that's how this video backup system stores its data onto the tape. It sort of creates a pattern on the screen which the video recorder records, and then when you want to restore your data, you play it back, and the input is achieved by going into this little box, and this basically decodes the composite signal somehow and reconstructs the data back in the memory, and then obviously that data is then copied back to your floppy disk or your hard disk, depending on the kind of backup you've done. The box on the back here, this is not the original box. This was a Stereo Master sampler that unfortunately died in my possession when I had one back in the day. So I repurposed the box because the original VBS circuit board is a right mess and a bodge. The way they've done it is sort of cheaply thrown together to sell is about the best way I can describe it. So I did that at the time, just have a nicer box for it to go in, and it wasn't so likely to fall apart, whereas the original one, well, sort of held together with hot glue, to be honest. So, yeah, so that's sort of a quick overview of it all, really. And what I'm hoping to do is probably make at least one, maybe a couple of videos on this VBS system and what it does, how it works, and do a restore on that. One of the things I did manage to achieve while I was at Swag, and I was trying to achieve this beforehand, was to restore an old backup that I had on this tape here, which was done, as I say, I think it's got to be over 25 years ago, and that was a backup of my old A500 hard drive with a 20 meg drive in it, and I did manage to get those files restored and boot off of that, and I can see the original setup I had all that time ago. It's not quite right. I'm probably going to redo the restore and do it differently this time, because there seems to be some duplication on there and sort of folders and icons a bit mixed on. I think I know why that's happened, so hopefully I'll be able to do a new video on that and cover all that and show the software and what it can do, because it's quite an interesting bit of hardware, and I think this is why Neil of RetroManCave, he sort of took interest in it, because it's, well, him and quite a few other people. I didn't really expect the level of interest that it had. I thought most people would have heard of it and most people would think, oh, okay, that's nice, you know, but apparently it's quite a novel thing. What I didn't realise, actually, if you watch LGR, this is Clint of Laser Game Reviews, he covered a similar system for the PC, which I didn't even know existed until he covered it, because as soon as he was talking about it, I thought, oh, that was on the Amiga. Why would they make that on the PC? Because it seemed a strange thing to have on the PC to me when you've got all these other tape backup systems. So yeah, that's the current bit of a mishmash setup here, but I'll do some videos on it while it's all set up like this. Obviously I don't want to leave all this like this long term. Anyway, if you're able to go to Swag or any other events like that, you know, check around nearby locally, see what events there are. There are quite a few people running events across the country every few months. The Swag one tends to be about once every 4 months. So there's another one, I think it's the 25th of January coming up, and I know they've booked the next one after that as well. So well worth looking at and going along, even if you don't take anything and you just turn up for a couple of hours. It's well worth going and seeing what's going on and meeting a few people if you can. I'll try and chuck some links in the description below if anyone's interested in looking at any of that. And yeah, that's it for now. Hopefully there won't be another 6-week gap before the next video.